Jim Croce was probably one of the best lyricists of our times. He could say so much and paint such a vivid picture in our minds with words. And along with those words, he would add the final touch with his guitar and voice, then deliver to us a song in such a way that they live in our hearts forever. It'll be 50 years this September of 2023 that Jim Croce died in a plane crash. His songs are timeless and still lives on, but questions remain. Hopefully we can answer some in this video. Born James Joseph Croce, January 10, 1943, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. By the age of 6, he was singing and playing on the accordion at church socials and family gatherings. From his father's record collection, he picked up on music ranging from that of Fats Waller and Bessie Smith to Dixieland. At age 15, he convinced his father that he needed a guitar to help him make his own music. And in a pawn shop along Philadelphia's Skid Row, his younger brother's neglected clarinet was traded for a used Harmony F-slot acoustic. Jim attended Upper Darby High School in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. After his graduation in 1960, he went to Malvern Prep School for a year before deciding to enroll at Villanova University in 1961 and would end up graduating with a degree in psychology. It was during this time in college that he started to look at music as more than just a hobby. He formed various bands and started performing at fraternity parties, coffee houses, and at universities around Philadelphia, playing the music that people wanted to hear. Rock, blues, folk, and just about anything, he said. One of those bands was chosen for a foreign exchange tour of Africa and the Middle East. Jim later said of the experience that we just ate what the people ate, lived in the woods, and played our songs. Of course, they didn't speak English over there, but if you mean what you're singing, people understand. It was around this time Jim met his future wife, Ingrid Jacobson, during a hootenanny at Philadelphia Convention Hall where he was judging a contest. A hootenanny is kind of an informal gathering where folk music is played and people would dance and have a good time. There were a lot of groups there, including a 4-piece group called the Rum Runners, in which Ingrid was playing in. Well, after meeting Ingrid, Jim asked her if she would hang out and play some music with him after the contest. She did, and it wasn't long after that before they were a serious couple. In 1965, he graduated from Villanova with a bachelor's degree, and later on, in 1966, he enlisted in the Army National Guard to avoid being drafted and deployed to Vietnam. Him and Ingrid would marry. He would release his first album, Facets. He would finance that album with the $500 him and Ingrid would get as a wedding present from his parents. Having 500 copies pressed, Jim would sell every one, making around $2,500. Jim and Ingrid were performing and writing songs now as a duo, and were encouraged by record producer Tommy West to move to New York City. The couple spent time in the Kingsbridge section of the Bronx and recorded their first album with Capitol Records. But when the record failed to generate much interest or sales, they were dropped from the recording contract. During the next couple of years, they drove more than 250,000 miles playing small clubs and concerts on the college circuit. After that, Jim and Ingrid decided to give up touring and move back to rural Pennsylvania. Jim took a job as a truck driver and whatever else he could find to make some money, and Ingrid settled into being a housewife. In 1970, she became pregnant with their son, Adrian James. Also in 1970, Jim met a musician who would play a very important role in his life and career, a pianist and guitarist, singer-songwriter, Maury Muhleisen from Trenton, New Jersey. He met him through producer Sal Joseph. Sal had been friends with Jim when they attended Villanova University together. Sal had discovered Muhleisen when he was teaching at Glassboro State College in New Jersey. So he brought the Jim and Maury duo together at the production office of Tommy West and Terry Cashman in New York City. Initially, Jim backed Maury on guitar at his gigs, but in time their roles reversed, with Maury adding lead guitar to Jim's down-to-earth music. With a baby on the way, Jim realized he was going to need more money coming in and decided to put some more effort into his music. Now, as the story goes, supposedly Jim sat down at his home and in 10 short days, he wrote the songs New York's Not My Home, Photographs and Memories, You Don't Mess Around with Jim, Time in a Bottle, and Operator. Again, that's just a story that floats around, but one thing for sure, he did write the songs. Most all of Jim's songs came from real-life experiences. He was a true artist in every sense of the word. He put those songs down on a cassette tape and took them up to New York for the producers to hear and was signed to a contract with ABC Records for a 3-album deal. It was said that when Jim and Ingrid left New York to move back to Pennsylvania, that they sold almost everything they had to pay off debts and get back. It was also said that Jim kept one guitar, and I have not read what type of guitar that was or what happened to it. But I did find an interesting story on a guitar that Jim was using around this time. It was borrowed from a friend who Jim would jam around town with on weekends. His name was Paul Wilson, and the guitar was a 1968 D21 Martin. When Jim secured a record contract, he purchased an old archtop guitar that exploded the first time he used it. He began borrowing a few guitars to continue recording, but Jim liked the sound of Wilson's Martin, so in August 1972, Jim asked Wilson to bring his Martin D21 to his home. Jim then asked him to borrow the guitar until he could find something he liked. Wilson agreed. So Jim toured and finished recording the album. It doesn't say what album, but the time frame would fit that first ABC album, Jim's third, which was titled You Don't Mess Around with Jim. This guitar, its case, finger picks, capo, and strings was sold at an auction in May of 2022. Accompanying the guitar is a letter of thanks to Paul Wilson from Jim's wife, dated July 11, 2003. Your generosity so many years ago in allowing your friend Jim Croce to borrow your Martin guitar to play his songs. As it is now approaching the 30th anniversary of Jim's passing, it's important to us that we memorialize the musical instrument that assisted Jim to forge his career, your Martin D21. It was a stepping stone for Jim Croce to achieve his successful career. Now, the guitar brought $50,000 at an auction. For some reason, that sounds a little low to me. Seems like this guitar should have brought more money from a collector than that. Just the guitar itself, its value should have been around 10 grand or so in 2022. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section. Jim charted 3 singles off the You Don't Mess Around with Jim album. Time in a Bottle was to go up to number 1, but that didn't happen until after his death. His next album, in 1973, Life and Times, would give Jim his only number 1 single while he was alive. That song was Bad Bad Leroy Brown. Right around that time, in 1973, Jim would move his family to San Diego, California. He was working non-stop with his duo partner, guitarist Maury Muhleisen, touring constantly, playing TV shows, colleges, auditoriums, working just as many dates as possible. Jim took a big advance on his recording contract, and he was working as much as possible to get it all paid back so he could start banking some of the money for himself and his family. He was also busy recording what was to become his last album of that contract. It was titled I Got a Name. The title song of that album was one of the very few songs that Jim didn't write. Jim was really getting overworked. He was feeling the strain. He was homesick, missing his wife and son. And at this time, he wasn't making much money. He was really thinking of a career change. The traveling and being away was getting to him. Right before he died, he wrote his wife Ingrid this letter. She received it 1 week after his death. Dear Ing, I know I haven't been very nice to you for some time, but I thought it might be of some comfort, sweet thing, to understand that you haven't been the only recipient of JC's manipulations. But since you can't hear me and you can't see me, I can't bullshit, using my sneaky logic and facial movements. I have to write it all down instead, which is a lot more permanent, so it can be reread instead of remembered. So, it's really right on the line. I know that you see me for who I am, or should I say, who I are, 'cause I've been lots of people. If Medusa had personalities or attitudes instead of snakes for her features, her name would have been Jim Croce. But that's unfair to you, and it's also unhealthy for me. And now I want to be the oldest man around, a man with a face full of wrinkles and lots of wisdom. So this is a birth note, baby, and when I get back, everything will be different. We're going to have a life together, Ing. I promise. I'm going to concentrate on my health. I'm going to become a public hermit. I'm going to get my master's degree. I'm going to write short stories and movie scripts. Who knows, I might even get a tan. Give a kiss to my little man and tell him Daddy loves him. Remember, it's the first 60 years that counts, and I've got 30 to go. I love you, Jim. The plane crash that killed Jim Croce and 5 others could have been avoided. It was blamed on pilot error, and that is what it was. Pilot Robert Elliott had a full load on the plane. He made a bad call taking off with a tailwind, which takes a lot more speed to get the plane off the ground and then up in the air. Why he didn't just turn it around on the runway and take off into the wind, we'll never know. Jim was killed on September 20th, 1973. He was 30 years old. His son AJ turned 2 years old on that September 28th. The single I Got a Name from his final album was released the day after his death, and the album itself was released December 1st, 1973. Jim's son AJ is a very fine musician in his own right. For a long time, he just worked on his own material, but as he grew older, he started to do some of his dad's songs. I've never seen him in person, just pieces of his shows on the internet, but catching him live is on my bucket list. I'll leave a link in the video description below of AJ's website. Check him out if you get a chance. His wife Ingrid wrote the book, I Got a Name, The Jim Croce Story. A very good and well-written book. It is still in print, and I recommend it highly. You can find it online. I'll leave a few links for Ingrid and some of her pages and websites also. Just check in the description. I saw where his wife said, after all these years of hard work and traveling, Jim had died with just his work shirt on his back and no bank account. I was angry that he had not been able to realize his financial success. It would have meant so much to him. All I can say is, Jim Croce and his music sure meant a lot to me and still does to this day. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your way out. And if you get a chance, check out a few more of the videos on my channel. If you have anything to add on this story, please feel free to do so in the comments section. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it.